I'm Luann Edwards. I'm a graduate of the class of 2002 in the marketing department, and currently I am a social media manager at FM Global. Prior to that, I spent 12 years in meetings and event management. So, and we can talk a little bit about that transition if anybody's interested later on. Today I've put together a presentation about the business of social. So how can you use social media for your business objectives? At any time, if you have questions, throw them out there. If you are not quite sure what I'm trying to get at some point, or if you even disagree or you're a little skeptical, raise your hand and jump right in. Definitely let's make this more interactive, because I want to get an idea of what you're looking for tonight, what kind of information you're looking for, and to deliver that for you. So because we're a small group, I'm hoping maybe we can just do a quick introduction of ourselves, talk a little bit about maybe what you're interested in learning tonight, if there's something that you really want to hear about, or any questions that you have. So we'll start on this side of the room.
So, hi, I'm Annie. I'm a communicator. I work at the book class, and that's my company. I'm advertising and marketing communication. And right now, I'm really into like digital social media.
Okay, great.
Hello everyone, my name's Hannah. I'm actually a JWOO alumna from 2014 with my master's, so I got my bachelor's before that, but I currently work at Dave & Buster's in the Providence Place Mall, and I handle all of our internal social media. So our corporate office has one, but we also have a local Facebook and mostly Facebook. We haven't gotten into Instagram yet. So mostly Facebook, and I'm actually interested to see, it's FM Global, right?
FM Global,
I'm
yeah.
actually interested to hear your business goals with Facebook and how you.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jason Storm, class of '99. By day, I work at corporate accounting for Gilbane downtown. What I'm really here interested in is for the past 14 years, I've done seasonal events like haunted hay rides and that type of things for haunted attractions, and over the past 6-8 years, I've also worked with podcasts. So definitely want to key into some of this and how we can make our social media imprint more effective.
Great.
I am Brenda Riley. I'm class of 1984 in travel tourism. I have a cruise planners franchise, a home-based business, and I'm looking to figure out how to use social media to grow my business.
Perfect.
And one particular thing I'm interested in right now is I have a Twitter event tomorrow, and I have no idea what it means.
A Twitter event. You're hosting a Twitter event, or you're attending?
To attend it.
Okay.
I don't know if I have to, can you access it after the fact?
I'd like to learn more about how they've introduced it to you. Because yes, anything on social media, one value of social media is that it does live after the fact. So if you're having like a tweet chat where you're answering questions, which is probably what it sounds like, it happens in real time, but you can always go back later and use the hashtag or however they use the coding to go back and look at it. It's archived. Yeah. Great.
Hi, I'm Kevin Wesley. I work with Liza in the Alumni Relations Office. I joined Johnson Wales in June, and so far it's been a terrific ride, and I got to meet Emma last week, so pretty awesome so far.
Great.
Jack Fighter. I'm 93 Culinary, 91 Culinary, 93 Resource Management. Day job is Director of Sales for wholesale meat companies, so I'm working with chefs, and then night and weekend job is a realtor, so I can use it in any form of social media all day long.
Okay. So you're using social media now in your current roles?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. So we might ask you for a little bit of your experience later if you're willing. No? Okay, well, no pressure.
Hi, I'm Kyle, class of 2014 in graphic design. Now I'm learning to use social media to reach out to potential clients for a freelance project.
I am Sarah, class of 2005. I work for Fairlane's extracts and ingredients, and I would like to open up my own spice company in the future, so I just want to know how to utilize social media.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll answer a lot of these questions. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Linda Musk. I'm 81 culinary graduate.
Okay, great.
I'm Ron Musk, 87 graduate coming, and I know nothing about social media, so I'm going to see if I can learn something.
Okay. You will. I promise. You all will. You all will. We have a lot of different pockets of information I think everybody will benefit from, which is partly why a lot of why I'm asking kind of how you, what you're looking for today and what your goals might be, because there's a solution on social media for everybody, I believe. So, yes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kenya. I'm a graduate of 2014. I currently work for Neighborhood Health in Rhode Island in the HR department. And I decided to sign up for a class or the workshop today because I feel I want to transition to more of a consultant
Mhm.
role, and I want to see how I can use social media because I have a lot of followers on Facebook and LinkedIn, and I'm currently just going through the feeds, and I want to be able to, be that person of interest that people want to hear what I have to say.
Mhm.
So that's what I'm here.
Yes, so to be an influencer or to be a thought leader, absolutely, yep. So for those who just joined us, we're introducing ourselves and talking about what we want to learn today. So if you don't mind, we'll continue this way. Yes, you're next.
My name is Mohan Kumar. I'm actually a graduate of 2008, 2008 class. I'm actually just in town. I was helping out a very dear friend of mine with her business, Nelson Catering and Events. And she invited me to come down and check it out. So I really just want to see what it's all about. Get from the whole thing.
Perfect.
I'm getting better as much as I can.
Mhm.
From everything else.
Awesome. Okay, great.
I'm Kevin, graduate of 2008 as well. Started Delcy with Pearl to my left here, and always willing to learn new things. And no matter how much I think I know social media, I know that there's something I can learn and take away from this class. So.
Great. Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Pearl Parkinson. I am class of 2012, and I'm also the alumni relations biggest mascot.
Fantastic.
And I'm really excited about this class because social media, it's so vital, both professionally and personally, and it can really make or break your image and your brand. So I would love to know some tips and tricks and the science behind all the platforms.
Perfect. Okay, we'll cover that.
Yeah, and I'm Ken Damaris, class of 79, and I've had a career in corporate food service management and executive chef work. And I am transitioning into Rhode Island. I am an advisor with Social Enterprise Greenhouse, and I am working on collaboration, this is very important to me. And I primarily, work through LinkedIn, but I'd like to really advance my other media skills. And but I'm, collaborating with organizations like Food Policy Council, Food Policy
okay.
Strategy, Experiential Education, and Farm to Table.
Okay.
initiatives. So-
Great. All right, great. Well, it's great to meet all of you. Thank you for introducing yourselves. We'll get started with the presentation, but again, just a reminder, jump in anytime with any questions. If I'm illustrating a point and you say, hey, I have experience with that, I've had luck with that, or I haven't had luck with that, just jump right in, because we'll all learn from each other. So here's what we'll do. We'll do a quick warm-up, test your knowledge. What do you know about social? It's fun, don't worry, it's not a quiz. We'll talk a little bit about actually the fundamentals of social media. What makes social media what it is? It's not only Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, which I know you probably know, but just in case. Then talk a little bit about the different platforms, because as you probably have guessed, they all serve a different purpose. They all have different strengths. And then we'll talk about developing a simple social media strategy. This will be a very basic framework that you can apply to all of your different goals. And then we'll talk about how you get started, and then I'll provide a few different references for you to look at later if you want to get a little deeper in some of the context. Okay? So we talked a little bit about what's most important to you today, what questions you want answered. Is there anybody that's like, I'm not really sure social media is for me? Too much time. Privacy, I'm a little concerned about that. Any reservations that you might have? Okay, well, if you think of some on the way, throw them out there. Because if you have a question or you have a concern, Somebody else does too.
I think maybe with, under reservations, maybe which type are right for each of us. You know, like Snapchat is one of the ones I just don't know anything about and haven't
Yeah.
really gotten into, but seems to have stuck around.
It's an interesting one. So a trend you will see more and more is, and I'm guessing we have some Snapchat experts in here. Is that fair to say? Yeah, I see a couple of nods. Okay. I'm going to tell you, I'm a social media expert, but Snapchat, it's taken me a little while to warm up to. But they all serve a similar function. So once you talk about the fundamentals, it all starts to kind of fit together. So knowing which platform suits your needs, we will talk about that. That's a great question. Okay, Facebook is social media. Fact or fiction? Not really. Well, it's a trick question. It's actually a social media platform. So it's one of the social media, ecosystem, if you will. So what is social media? Social media as a concept is no different than what we were doing, or not what we were doing, but our ancestors were doing hundreds of years ago. Getting together in the local pub, in the local village, talking to each other in groups. Multi-way conversation. What social media has done today is it's brought devices and technology together to help you do it with people you don't necessarily know in different time zones, different languages, and different geographies. So what it has done, it has given everybody a voice. So years ago, you'd be watching TV, a commercial would come on, you would receive the information on that commercial, and that would be it. Maybe you would buy the product, maybe not, you'd forget about it. But now, on social media, you have the ability to talk back to that brand. You have a voice, they have a voice, now you can interact. So multi-way conversation, open conversation, that's really what social media describes. So anytime you are interacting by liking, sharing, commenting, upvoting, downvoting, rating, this is all social media technology. If you comment on a news story, social media. If you rent on Airbnb and make a comment, social media. So just remember, it's a technology that's enabling this multi-way conversation. One more question for you. LinkedIn is designed for sales execs and recruiters. It's fiction. It's also not maybe as precise as it could be. LinkedIn is not only for sales execs, not only for recruiters, not only for people who are looking for jobs, not only for people who are networking, but all of the above. So when you think about LinkedIn, keep these stats in mind. 450 million users, about 2 a minute join LinkedIn. They are in 200 countries using the platform in 24 different languages. There are 4 million company pages, so if you're talking about starting your own business or growing awareness for your business that exists today, a LinkedIn company page is being seen by those visitors. So LinkedIn is being used for marketing, for networking, for keeping in touch with your colleagues in your alumni association. We'll show you later that there's a group dedicated to Johnson & Wales alum. It's great for telling people about your developments in your career. It's a communication tool for business, so keep that in mind. Some of these questions have come over from my experience over time where people will say, I don't like X because I believe this. And what I'm trying to do here is say, it's much, much more broader than that. So much more benefit. We'll go a little bit more into it in a minute, but this one's come up a little bit recently. So if you're using social media, are you at greater risk for privacy violations? Yes. Yeah, it kind of depends, right? It's not a yes or no question. You could be using any kind of service or product and could be at risk. So the first thing is know your privacy settings. A recent study came out and said that many users aren't actually aware of the privacy settings on their social media platforms, and they're sharing things as if they're private, but they're not. So just know what your privacy settings are. And if you wouldn't put it in writing, you probably don't want to put it on social media in general, so use your good judgment. And remember what the purpose is for each platform. So Twitter, for example, very open, very searchable, which is the benefit, right, of Twitter. You're reaching people you would never have met based on a hashtag, maybe, or based on a keyword in their profile. But you don't want to put your social security number on Twitter. Well, really anywhere, but you don't want to put private information in an open platform. So use your good judgment and keep aware of what the privacy settings are. Make sure you keep up to date with yours. Facebook has gotten very good about reminding people to check their privacy settings every so often. They change them fairly frequently. So make sure you're just aware of what you're sharing with your connections, with the public, and just use your good judgment. And just keep in mind, I pulled this off of Twitter, that free products are free products. So always look at the terms and conditions of the platforms you're using to make sure you're comfortable with what information is being shared with third parties. So we talked about the social media kind of changing the way we communicate using technology, but not really a new concept. So there's one-to-one communication, which you're familiar with, right? You pick up the phone, you make a quick phone call. Social has really enabled this multi-way conversation. But what's really important is thinking about social media as it's a network. It's a way to communicate with your network. It's a way to demonstrate your expertise, and it's a way to influence. So it's kind of just the fundamental, here's all the different ways social media are alike. So if you apply this to YouTube or Snapchat or WhatsApp or Instagram, it all kind of has the same fundamental purpose, right? Does everybody kind of see the line I'm trying to draw? No? Okay. And every platform has a purpose. So you could be sharing photos like on Flickr or on Instagram, or quick videos on Vine, or live videos on Periscope. So while we're enabling multi-way communication with bigger groups, each platform serves something a little bit differently. But it's all about you as the user, or your clients who are following your company page, or your future company page, or the people you want to influence. Maybe it's media partners who you'd like to appear in an article if you're trying to communicate with them about a new product or service. So what you have to always be careful of is that you're adding value. When you're sharing information that adds value to the people who are following you, you look good, but you're also providing them with a benefit that they wouldn't have ordinarily had. So just keep that in mind. You always want to add value, because otherwise, if you're not adding value, they could tune you out. They could say, you know what, I'm not getting a lot from following this person or connecting with this person. I'm going to mute their posts, or I'm going to disconnect with them or unfollow them. So how are professionals using social media? Well, we talked a little bit about that as we went around the room, right? We're trying to raise awareness about our product or service or ourselves, connect with peers, connect with colleagues. Actually, don't let me get ahead of myself. I wrote some of these out. So demonstrate your skills and experience. This is really important if you're trying to gain new clients or look for a new position. Or you might be trying to recruit somebody into your company, and they want to know a little bit about your career path. Networking is obviously important in real life. Face-to-face networking, huge, right? How many people are in a relationship industry? Pretty much everybody. If you remove social media or the technology out of it, it's really all about interpersonal relationships, human relationships. This is a tool. Staying informed about news. I think you've probably noticed that a lot of social media channels have become almost like media outlets, right? Facebook, what's trending in the news, both from user-generated content from users like yourselves and myself, or content from media outlets, or content from Facebook itself. You can also research. You can research competitors, employees, prospective employees, employers rather, families, friends, staying in touch. And you can nurture leads. If you're working with a sales funnel and you want to get an idea of who you're trying to reach out to, who your prospects are, it's another tool. And you can share information yourself. So how many people like reply-all emails? Nobody ever raises their hand. They're terrible. But instead of sending a reply-all email or a mass email to 500 of your contacts to say, hey, I have a new position, or hey, I'm moving into a new market, or I have a new company I'm starting, you can now do it on social media in a way that later they can go back to and say, oh, wait a minute, I heard Luann was moving to this other place. Where was that again? Oh, well, let me look at her LinkedIn profile. So this is just an overview of the different platforms. It's a lot on the slide, so I'll leave it up for a moment. And it's very general. So it's not going to capture everything. But really looking at your audience, looking at how people use it, and looking at the strengths. So LinkedIn, pure business platform. It's great for researching and networking, and they're very particular about what kind of communication you can have on LinkedIn, who you can contact if they're not your connections. Twitter it's not an audience of like one particular age group, one particular geography. It is, everybody uses Twitter all over the map. So it's a very diverse audience. Quick headlines, links to other media. It's very searchable, and you can create lists. Does anybody use Twitter lists? Excellent. Do you want to talk about it at all? Can you tell us what kinds, or?
Yeah, sure. You can, I usually follow my competitors.
Mm-hmm.
So you can create a list of what they're tweeting and basically just keep an eye on who you want. You can either make it public or private, what lists you want to follow. So obviously you don't want your competitors following them. So that's a private list. But if you have a list of your favorite sports athletes or what have you, that can be public.
It's exactly right. So the answer is you can create Twitter lists to follow accounts based on for a particular reason or topic. So you might have a competitor list, and you have the choice of making it public or private. Now, what's the value of making a public list?
You might be following things that you want people to know that you're following.
So it's a way for people to see what you've identified as important, right? You've grouped these people together, and it makes you an authority. So if you say these are you said you're in the events industry, yes? Okay. So you can say these are the top venues in this area. And then people can follow your Twitter list because it's public. They can subscribe to it. So now you've established yourself as a thought leader in this area in a very subtle way. Now you also know who's interested in this because they've subscribed to your list. And you've organized this content in a way that's very easy for you to follow. Twitter lists are like if you're not using them, take a peek at them. And I'm happy at the end if you want me to go through a quick demo of how to set them up. It's super easy. But I think it's like one of those hidden gems on Twitter where a lot of people don't use it, but really interesting stuff. Facebook, really strong on the B2C, business to consumer area. I work for an insurance company called FM Global. We use it. We're a B2B company, so we sell to other large companies. It's really great for the human side, really showing community activity, personal side of your brand, what's happening with your employees. It's also great for longer form content versus Twitter, which is that quick headline. And very highly adopted, a very large group of people using it. Whereas Instagram is maybe a little bit of that younger audience, although this has even shifted a bit. You're seeing much wider adoption as well. Anybody have a WordPress blog? See one back there. What's your blog about?
It's actually my portfolio.
Oh, it's your portfolio.
I use WordPress as the backend.
Okay, so you have your own dedicated domain, and then you use WordPress. Okay, that's what I use for my blogs as well. I have my own domain, but then I use WordPress as the platform in the background for the content management. WordPress is great because it provides you with a platform to blog on that you can either use their domain, right, have like your blog name.wordpress.com, and other WordPress users can find it that way, or you can, if you have your own website domain, you can use it kind of in the background. It's a great great service, and you can pick all sorts of themes and designs and customize it as much as you want. If you are in an industry that you want to share a portfolio, it's a great example of using WordPress, or if you're a writer, you want to blog about certain activity that you're doing in your businesses, this is a great way for you to set up a place where you can share your expertise online. So definitely something to look at. Google Plus and YouTube I kind of put in the same area because they're both owned by Google. Great for SEO, right, search engine optimization. Both are Google products. You can share videos, obviously, on YouTube. A lot of people don't realize that YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world after Google. Its parent company, or I guess Alphabet's not the parent company, but if you have video, oftentimes people are finding you through a YouTube search, not maybe by a Google search for your name or your video content. So if you have video content, you definitely want to be on YouTube. Yes?
Could you just, for those of you not familiar, could you talk a
Mhm.
at some point, how it works and some of the optimization tricks that are.
Sure, yeah. So it might be a good time actually in this slide. So search engine optimization is the way that you code your website or you use other techniques to help when people search for you to come up earlier in the rankings on search engines. Certain things, I know I have good knowledge on this, but I'm not a super expert like I am on other social platforms, so I just want to give that full disclosure there. When you're coding a website, for example, anytime you put a header in, page title, these are all keywords that are being looked at by the search engines. And so the more frequently you have certain keywords, the more likely it is to rise up. But it has to be also intelligent coding too. So if you just put, I don't know, shoe store in the background of your website, it won't necessarily get you better results on your search engine if you're a shoe store and you want people to find you that way. But if you have keywords that, or that make sense in the coding, like how you code your images in the alt image text. I don't want to get too codey, but all of that helps when a search engine is looking through the web to find things that match your search the best. That helps you just kind of rise up a little earlier. On a personal note, like my LinkedIn page, if you Google my name, my LinkedIn page will be one of the first, one of the top page results. So your social media content also will help you in your search results. So having a social presence will help your business probably be found a little bit more easily.
So did you put your LinkedIn?
Use keywords differently.
Okay.
Yeah, I included keywords in my LinkedIn page that I might not have otherwise done if I didn't want to be found. So marketing, social media, interactive media, digital media, strategist, marketing strategist, digital strategist. Yes.
Two questions. First was on SEO, and I know you're not an expert.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at SEO companies, they all charge an arm and a leg per month.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I bought an SEO for Dummies book and read a lot of stuff that you're talking about and went on Moz and did some stuff myself.
Mm-hmm.
Can you do it yourself?
I believe you can.
Anybody?
I believe you can.
It seems like
If you're comfortable with it, if you understand the underlying technology, and it sounds like you do.
yeah.
And the other thing, here's the other thing. It's not a science. Well, I mean, it's a science, but we don't know what it is, right? Because if we figured it out, then we would be able to make ourselves rise up above everybody else. So nobody will, except for the people who are in the background of Google and Bing and all of those, will never fully know exactly the perfect recipe, right? But I think if you apply best practices to how you code your website, like I said, you don't want to put the same keyword 100 times in the notes, right? But if you make the user experience a strong one, chances are you're applying the best practices that will then also give you that boost. So if you're comfortable with it and you understand it, I think you could do it.
And the second question is on YouTube. If you have one really good video,
Mm-hmm.
does it make sense to put it on YouTube, or do you need to have consistent streams?
I think my personal opinion, which is may not be shared by many, is that it's a place for you to host video. So if you have one video, it's not like a Twitter account where you post one thing and then you never go on again and it just, it becomes inactive. Yeah, I think YouTube to me is a channel. So your video will always be on that channel, and if people are searching for it, they can access it.
So it might make sense.
It might make sense. It's a hosting platform, so as well as a social media platform. To go back though, the question of when to hire an SEO firm, it depends. It also depends on the complexity of your business. It depends on what you're trying to achieve. So I don't want to say never invest in that. It really just depends on what your needs are. But you could, I think you could do it yourself if you have the background. Yeah. Yes.
So before I joined Johnson & Wales, I actually was doing content writing
Oh, okay.
for various SEO companies.
Mhm.
And I think one of the things that sort of helped me understand keywords more than anything else is when someone said, think about how you use Google. You're going to search for Providence Haunted Hayride
Mhm.
or Providence Caterer.
Mhm.
And that then made some of the really awkward phrasing I needed to put in some of this content. It wasn't about the sentence, it was about the sequence of those
Mhm.
keywords.
Yeah. That's a great point. So the example was, put yourself in the user's shoes, right? Think about how you would phrase a search. Think about how you would word something. And it kind of goes back to that user experience, right? Customizing your content for how people are actually looking for it. Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's an interesting area. As I mentioned, it's not an area that I'm as specialized in. I have some knowledge of it just based on my training. But yeah, it's an interesting area, and it's changing all the time too. So.
I have a question on that. Can
Sure.
you test the effectiveness of your coding? Like, if you try to test it yourself,
Mm-hmm.
it may respond differently to you as a user than it would to someone who's unrelated to you.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I think there is software and there are techniques where you can test it, but I can't think of any off the top of my head now. But yeah, there are ways to do that. It could.
Would logging out of your Google and doing it without logged in help?
Could, yeah.
I have something real quick. I went on this website called Moz,
Mhm.
Moz.
Moz is a great resource.
30-day free trial.
Mm-hmm.
After that, you gotta pay, but you can check it out in 30 days. But they had, you can like type in your competitors, type in your website, and it gives you like all the information you need to get started with SEO. Like these are the keywords you should have on your website.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Moz, MOZ.com. Yeah, that's a great resource. I should actually add that to my final slide because that is a good one. Yeah.
It's expensive after 30 days, but
Yeah.
30 days you get a good idea.
Yeah. And there, so I don't mean to minimize the services that are provided by some of these companies because it is an expertise, and depending on the, what your goals are and the type of business or the type of personal use you have for it, it could be a good application too. So it just depends on your comfort level and your knowledge. But it could be a really good investment. So yeah, I don't want to minimize the services. It's a good, and it's also, again, not my super expertise, but yeah. Does anybody have, yes?
I was just wondering, is there a way to customize like what you see on LinkedIn? Because I feel like the interests or things that I want to see, myself as a professional,
Mm-hmm.
are not like, it's just people like liking things,
Okay.
a lot of political stuff. I know it's going on your page.
This is LinkedIn specifically you're asking about, right? How can you customize your newsfeed for LinkedIn? Okay, so your newsfeed is made up of a lot of different components on LinkedIn. And I can also demonstrate this after, too, when we have a little bit of time. There's a few different ways you can tackle this. Part of it is the news sources you're following through the LinkedIn Pulse section. So you want to make sure you customize that so you're only following what you're really interested in. And that you might change every so often. And you can do that when you go into the edit profile section and you scroll down to that part where it says news you're following or influencers you're following. So make sure that the people you're following are delivering content that adds value to you. If it's not adding value for you, unfollow them. They don't know you're unfollowing them, so don't worry. They're not going to be offended. That's always a question. If I unlinked with somebody on LinkedIn, will they know? I'm like, well, if they take inventory every day, they will. But LinkedIn, and I'm not saying that nobody does that. I'm saying it's rare, and they don't get an email saying, Kenya disconnected with you because you shared, terrible posts. You can also, in your newsfeed, hide things from particular people. Hide content that's provided by particular people. So if you don't want to disconnect with someone, but you want to kind of just mute them, what I'll call it, there's a little drop down right in the section that says hide from this person. And they're not going to know unless they're wondering why you stopped liking all their posts, and then that's another question. You also, there's a little bit of, I think there's like 3 dots at the top of your newsfeed where you can customize how your newsfeed is configured. So there's a lot of different, I don't know that there's any one way to say, okay, here's a list of things to check, but I think these are a few different ways you can tweak it. Sure.
Twitter, how do you not get lost in Twitter? Like when you post something, it seems to just get buried instantly. I don't know. Do you have any tips on that?
So you mean so the question was how do you not get buried in Twitter, or how do you not get lost in Twitter? So are you saying that as a user yourself, or are you saying how do you make sure that your content is being viewed by people?
I guess the latter.
Yeah, how do you not get lost in the noise,
Yeah.
right? First of all, the more followers you have, the more visibility you have for your posts. The more people you follow, the more followers you will get, because then they'll realize you're on Twitter and you might look interesting. Adding people to lists also, if it's a public list, will notify them, which will make them look at you, and so that does help. Coding it with a hashtag, the right hashtag. Yeah. I always recommend looking at what the hashtag is doing. So if you, making sure it's the right hashtag you want to use. Because sometimes, so I work for an insurance company, and we'll post some things about weather, natural hazards. Well, hashtag natural hazards is hurricane, earthquake, things that happen naturally. At one time, I did a search for natural hazard, and it was all people talking about what a rough night they'd had the night before. So you probably don't, so you want to always just do a quick search, make sure it's really what you want to associate with. That may not be true today, because things change, right? Hashtag meanings change. So look at what's being used that's most appropriate for your use. Mention people. So event profs is a hashtag I use, but also you can mention, you can create a list of, so I'm going to be specific about events because I also have a background in events. So you can create a Twitter list of all the event managers or whatever your potential clients, right? Would be, you can mention them if it's something specific to them, then their followers see it. So incremental things you can do. But unfortunately, Twitter is fast moving. It's very open, and there are a lot of users. A lot of users. So right now there are 320 million users on LinkedIn. I'm sorry, on Twitter. Which about hashtags and getting more exposure and the fast moving Twitter. Now, what's great about Twitter is if you're establishing yourself as a thought leader, this is a way you can get exposure to people who may not have met you otherwise. LinkedIn is another way. If you can publish a post. So instead of doing an quick update, here's a link to my new website, you can actually publish an article. And that's viewed by people who are following a topic. So it may not be Twitter, maybe LinkedIn Pulse, like publishing. So there's a few different ways. Yes?
How often would you suggest to post on Twitter?
Depends. It depends. It has to be realistic for you. So how often should you post on Twitter? It depends. Some companies will post 5 to 7 times a day, 2 to 3 times a day. As an individual, I post 3 or 4 times a week. So it's what's realistic for you.
Is there such thing as too much? Like, if you post too much, your followers will be like, all right, enough.
Yes. But chances are you will be able to put yourself in your followers' footsteps and have an idea of what's too much before you cross the line. Chances are you know your audience. We'll talk about that in a second. If you know your audience, you kind of know when you've stopped adding value and when you've overdone it. But yeah, depending on what it is, like, is it newsworthy? Is it something that you need to post about, 10 times a day or so? Yeah, so think about adding value.
I would go back to putting myself as a user.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna want to see that 3 times a day, 4 times,
Yeah.
4 times a week or something.
Mm-hmm.
So if I think it's too much, I take it off.
Yeah. And depending on where your followers are. So you can go into analytics and see, depending on, I think, how many followers you have, you can see where people are geographically. So you can think about time zones. So you might post something twice so that it hits their timeline at the right time for them. So think about your audience. Yes.
So I don't use Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
but if you create your own hashtag, I guess it's just it identifies where people go to view
Mm-hmm.
the content.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so a hashtag is a keyword, and when you put the hash or the pound sign in front of it, it makes it clickable and searchable. So, yeah.
So with all of the users, there must be redundancy with those terms.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
What happens to that incident? It will retrieve all of it?
Yeah.
Retrieve all, okay.
Yep,
So
and you
think it-
scroll and scroll and scroll looking for, you know, and that's where you get a little bit lost with the noise. So you have to choose your hashtag wisely.
That's where it gets so lost.
Mhm.
That's the question I had earlier. How do you stop that?
Right.
Yeah. And maybe you use 2 hashtags, and maybe you use 3, but never more than 3, in my opinion. Never more than 3. Some people love to use hashtags, and no offense if anybody in the room does this, but like multiple words. You know what I was going to say? Hashtag Mondays are terrible when it rains. So, you know, I don't advise that because it's not searchable. It's kind of more of a style, right? Like it's funny, but.
But I feel like I thought that the more hashtag you use, the more, I guess, exposure you get to, you know, what you're trying to accomplish with it. So that's why I use so many hashtags. I saw the difference too, like from going from using 4 or 5 different hashtags to using 8 or 10 different hashtags.
Hmm.
To see how many people reach you and how many followers you instantly start getting.
Mhm.
I don't know. I guess depending on the platform, I
Mhm.
guess.
And you know, hashtags don't function on every platform. So for example, LinkedIn, hashtags will only function on the mobile site now, but not the desktop.
That's weird.
It is weird. So it used to function everywhere, and then they pulled it back, and now they've launched it, but only on mobile. But you have it on Instagram, you have it on Facebook, you have it on Twitter. So for example, on Instagram, it actually might give you more value because the only content is not the text. You're getting the image. On Twitter, if you're only getting text, people might tune it out. So you get more impressions, but it's quick impressions, not really valuable. So this brings up a good point. Social media, your usage of social media is about personal style as well. So what I'm saying here might not actually be a perfect fit for what you're using it for, right? Everybody has a good example of an exception or exceptions. But also, different platforms have different uses. Different platforms have different benefits. So put yourself in your user's shoes. If you're looking at a Twitter account that just has a lot of hashtags, do you pay attention? If you do, maybe your audience does too. So yeah, so there's no like one perfect answer, right? Yes.
So, is there any expiration on what's created? No.
Not unless someone deletes it.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, that's the interesting and also a little bit cautionary part of social media is once you put something out there online, it's there forever. You can delete it, but somebody could have grabbed a screenshot, or it could be, you know, archived somewhere else too. So, yeah. So.
I'm just thinking we're going to run out of terms at some point.
Searchable. Well, you'll run out of you'll run out of the scrolling, the will to scroll to get through all of it, right? Yeah, but yeah, but it's a little bit of trial and error, too. It's a little bit of trial and error. See what works. Yes.
How do you know if your LinkedIn profile has the right that is of appeal to, companies, influencers, or maybe your client base, or even recruiters? How do you know if the content that you have on your, can you like search yourself keywords? Is that a way to do that?
So you can do a search on LinkedIn. So the question was, how do you know that your LinkedIn profile is created in a way that people are looking for, whether it's recruiters or clients or whatever? So that's a great question. There's a few answers. One is that you can look at other people's profiles who have similar backgrounds, particularly those who have a high follower count or connection count, and get an idea of how they're describing themselves. There is also a lot of resources out there that say, okay, if you're in X industry, here's what people are looking for. If you kind of put yourself in the user's shoes, what would you be looking for? Think of it from a user experience perspective. Again, it's also a little trial and error. Now, LinkedIn, if you're building a business, right, or consulting business, I think, you would want to create a company page and make sure you're using the keywords that people would be looking for. So there's a lot of different answers, I guess. A little bit of trial and error, again, but yeah, I think a little bit of searching might give you a good idea. Okay, let's talk strategy. So this post method is from a book called why am I blanking on this? Groundswell. Is it Groundswell? I think it's Groundswell. It's at the end of the presentation, so if you wanted to take a peek at it. But it's a nice framework getting started on a strategy. So if we think about social media as a tool, not as something that stands alone by itself, that you have to do with extra time, if you think of it as a tool that makes your life easier, more efficient, then you actually take a step back from using social media as a technology and thinking of it as, how does this enhance my real life activities, your goals, building a business, retaining clients, raising awareness, influencing people. And you look at it in 4 ways. Who are the people? Who are you talking to? Who are your followers? You can do this in your personal accounts too. You know, when you connect with your friends on Facebook or your friends on Instagram, you're sharing things with them because you think they would appreciate them. They're following you because they do. So think about that in the business context too. What need are you meeting? What information are you sharing? Then your objectives, like what are you trying to do? We just went through all of those. And then strategy, what's the plan? And then your tactics are the specifics. Post 5 times a day on Twitter. Use 5 hashtags related to this topic. That kind of thing.
Actually, Kevin and I, once we discussed, even time period in the day when we post content on social media as well. Obviously, for instance, just for an example, I'm a chef, so I try a lot of the people that I follow try to reach the chefs as well. So obviously, everybody nowadays starts around the same time, 5 a.m., 6 a.m. So if you're trying to reach them on certain posts and whatnot, you know when the most likely to be reachable via their social media profiles. So the other night I posted a picture. I usually post a lot for the morning, and instantly it was 82. So and then the same content you post at 3 in the afternoon, and chances are they're in the middle of lunch service, they can't see anything you're posting, so now you leave your understanding who, like you said, who they are, when to reach them, time zones and things like that.
That's a
Also good
great example.
at the personal stuff.
Mhm.
Say Kevin, Saturday night, 8 o'clock, everyone's going out, now it's time to post personal stuff.
So that's a great,
Goes both ways.
yeah, that's a great example of know your audience, know their behavior, know what they're doing, know what meets their needs. Yes.
I was going to step in and suggest using the Facebook Insights
Mm-hmm.
at Dave & Buster's as what I do on a weekly basis because it changes also every week. So, for example, our most popular time that people are viewing our Facebook is Saturday. Well, of course, it's people on a Saturday are looking for what to do.
Mm-hmm.
But then the next week it was 6 o'clock. So it's also, I always kind of trial and error too. I try different times once in a while to see how it works, and I change it a little bit. But by those times, even okay, so the first week 6, and then maybe like a 7.
Or maybe you look at Waterfire schedule and say, does that have any impact? Or look at, or is there some event in the city, or is there a convention in the city where people are going to be looking at your page, when the conference breaks at 5:30? So think about all of those other outside influences too that affects your user behavior.
So Facebook has a tab, Insights, on your page, and when you click through that, there's a ton of tabs that come up on the left. But there's people, and then I can't think of the other one.
Yeah, I can actually show, I have a couple of Facebook pages. I can show you the insights on the background, and we can, if you want to point out some things too. The ones I have are personal pages, so 'cause I obviously couldn't show you the one for my company, but I'm happy to show you one where I post, and you can see some of the insights and how Facebook measures it. And I think you need 50 followers on your page to get the insights, to get access to the insights. But it's really interesting. I mean, it's down to the cities where people. It's fascinating. Yeah.
And then, as we get in more into Facebook, if you do run ads, you can use that. So I want to really target the woman of 24 that has been looking at your page. So the insights really give you a really good idea of who's looking at your page.
Yeah, and you're starting to see now that a lot of these platforms are providing you with insights as well, like Twitter Analytics, great tool. I think there's a threshold you have to meet as far as followers go and activity goes, but I can show you also my Twitter insights. You could see, if you were here a little earlier, you might have seen me kind of setting that up, but really interesting things to help you know what's resonating with your audience, who your audience is, where they are. So just knowing that is really going to give you a lot of edge over other people who are just kind of winging it.
Helps with strategy too. With doing on Hayride pages. First I post these pictures of our beautiful sets with the long exposure, and it's not getting hits. And then one or two times I take a picture with somebody in line as I'm dressed up as a character, and suddenly that's off the charts. And I'm like, oh yeah, peeps want to see themselves.
We do love seeing pictures of ourselves.
A lot of good sets
Yeah.
too, for seeing people.
Yeah. So I think we covered this pretty adequately. Who's your audience? Know who your audience is. What are your objectives? Is it personal objectives to establish your credibility, to find a new job, or to look good, if you want to be a speaker at a conference or be a media spokesperson? Are you connecting with people, getting back in touch with people, nurturing leads, getting the word out? So what are your objectives? Kind of your big goals. And what's your strategy? So do you want to build your network on LinkedIn? Do you want to create a company page and have 25 followers by the end of the month who are in your industry? How are you going to get those folks? Particularly if you're in an industry where you have a lot of really good visual content. If you're a chef, if you have event venues, or if you do event work, if you're you're showing any kind of visual representation. Bless you. Instagram is great for that. Creating a presence on WordPress. So you can have a WordPress site. We call it a blog, right? I think it's called a blogging platform, but it could be all pictures. You can really customize it how you'd like, but think about what your strategy is and then break it down into tactics. So having an outline of a plan, having an outline of your strategy will help you really customize your social media activity so it's got purpose. So you don't feel like you're just doing things and it's overwhelming and you've heard that you have to post 15 times a day, so you're trying to do that. But really, is that really what your audience wants? So kind of having a good understanding of these 4 areas is really a good start. So let's step over to LinkedIn specifically, because I think in business it's really the key platform. So good profile is it's the first impression you make. People are looking you up on LinkedIn, whether they're meeting you for the first time or they haven't seen you in 20 years, or you went to school together but you're not sure it's the right person. So what do you think is the most important thing on a good LinkedIn profile? Picture. Yes. Picture is important. First of all, you're 14 times more likely to be viewed on LinkedIn than somebody without a photo. It also communicates that you're serious about completing the profile. It's active. Hopefully it looks like you, it's a current picture, so that if I see you at the next alumni event, and it's been a while, we'll recognize each other. Your headline. This is what shows up next to your name in search. So you probably want to use keywords. Global media manager, social media manager is how I have mine. Content strategist. So keywords, how you want to be described. Accurate ones, of course. I know we're all Jedi Knights in our respective areas, but you probably don't want to describe yourself as that on LinkedIn. People do. It's very common. Guru, ninjas. I mean, it is like, we are all superheroes on our LinkedIn page, but we really shouldn't be. We should be, does somebody have ninja on there? No? Okay. So, you want to be taken seriously. You want to put your professional self forward. So, use your headline wisely. How many people are on LinkedIn now? Okay, so we're pretty much the majority. How many of you have a summary? Okay, so summary is a great place for you to have that one-to-one interaction with people visiting your site. Should be first person, and LinkedIn recommends it. It's about 3 paragraphs. Your background, your passion, a little bit about the company you work for, the company you'd like to work for if you're looking, or the company you'd like to start, or you've started, services you provide. So make it human, right? Make it personal, make it interesting. And your experience. This is really important. because this is how people make connections with you. This is how they say, oh, we used to work together at this company, or I remember interacting with you when you worked here, or, you know, I have a friend in common. Okay, yes, we met at this networking event. So it's just another way for you to provide that context. And connections, the more you have, the more visibility you have. The more people you can see, the more results you have in search. So what's your philosophy? And feel free to just shout it out. What's your philosophy about connecting with people on LinkedIn who you don't know? You should?
No. Well,
Oh.
I heard that you shouldn't, but I do.
You do?
Because in Rhode Island, it's so small, so eventually I will. And especially if I want to do business with you, like I'm a caterer.
Yeah.
So my biggest clients are event planners, and I might not know you, but I'm gonna find out who you
Yeah.
are.
So you're doing research for your leads, right, on LinkedIn? Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say it depends for me.
Mhm.
If I look at their headline,
Mhm.
if it relates to what I am looking for, then I might accept them.
Mhm.
But if it's kind of random and out there, I might not.
Yeah. Okay. And
No, I
sorry.
have a similar talent to what you said. It just has to be purposeful.
Mhm.
I don't know you, but you sell meat. I'm gonna probably link with you because I buy meat.
Yeah. Okay.
Sort of thing.
I found it's effective. It really strengthens collaborations or potential for collaborations.
So it strengthens collaboration. It should be purposeful if you do. You should have something in common. And I'm sorry, anything else? No? Yes?
In my work, one of the things I do, so this is a forewarning, is I will send a LinkedIn request the day after any alumni event I go to.
Mhm.
Because I also want to be a connector.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great, so you want to be a connector.
I actually have a question for you being in events, because events is my industry and that's
Mhm.
what I want to do forever.
Mhm.
And I guess I find it hard to pick and choose because obviously I want any event that could come in,
Mhm.
but at the same time, if it's so far stretched, I'm not sure.
Yeah. It's a personal preference. There is no one answer. So I'm sorry that I'm going to probably say this even more as we go forward in this, you know, in the next few, you know, slides, but it is an extension of your personal brand online or your personal experience. So it really is your preference. My personal feeling is if I know someone in real life, I'll connect with them on LinkedIn. So for example, now we've all met. So feel free if you'd like to send me a connection request. I'd be happy to connect with you. So, but one of the things I recommend is that you customize the note. So if somebody random sends you a request and you can't really see a connection, and then they don't customize the note and it's just, I'd like to add you because you're someone I know and trust. And it's like, but I don't know you. So how do you trust me? And then you start to think, well, you know, just, you know, you can customize that note in a couple of minutes. And then if we have something in common, I will connect with them. LinkedIn recommends that you connect with people you know and trust. I found that on a response that somebody asked the Twitter help bot on, the LinkedIn help bot on Twitter, which is kind of funny. I found it on Twitter about LinkedIn, but they say you should connect with people you know and trust. But it depends on your objectives, because if you want to connect with people, what I would recommend in that case is you actually set up time to meet or for a quick phone call, because you are letting someone into your profile. They can see your mutual connections, at least, depending on your settings. So you are allowing them information that they wouldn't otherwise have. So I don't think if they're connecting with you on LinkedIn, they're getting a benefit as well. I think you should take advantage of the connection and say, let's, you know, that opportunity, and say, let's meet for coffee. Let's have a quick conversation. Let's talk about how we can collaborate, network.
You said you can have a business page on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps maybe keeping your personal side.
Yep.
Keeping it safe and then maybe accepting the friendship on the business side.
So a LinkedIn page, you actually don't have to accept. They just follow you.
Oh,
Yeah. On a Facebook page, same thing. Versus your profile where you have to accept that connection. Yeah. But if you have you know, a brand, a company brand, then you definitely want to have a page so people can find it easily and follow it. Okay. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit just because we're running out of time. But how do you get started? We talked a lot about different techniques, but in general, create your presence first. If you haven't already, start. If you have, fine-tune. Create a strong profile. They'll have similar components, a description, a photo, header image maybe. Join groups if it's on LinkedIn. Create Twitter lists if it's on Twitter. And then listen. Read what people are saying. See what people are interacting with. Look at your analytics. Get an idea of what's resonating. And then comment and share with other people's activity. So this is a nice nod to their efforts, but also it helps get you on their radar if you would like. And then connect with others. Participate in groups, particularly in LinkedIn. Look for groups that are specific to your industry. Create Twitter lists, and then publish content that adds value. So Groundswell is where the post method is described in great detail. It's a great book. It's one that was recommended during my studies in social media. In general, Moz, I think I would add to this, moz.com. Socialmediaexaminer.com. Marketing Think is a blog by a social media manager with really great blueprints. Blueprint for a great LinkedIn profile, great Twitter profile. And then Kaushik.net, great for analytics advice. Probably some SEO in there as well. So that is my last slide. And I know that we're going to be moving into our reception, so I'll wrap it up here. But I will be here if you have any questions and you want to chat a little bit further. So thank you very much for being an awesome group of, it's not really an audience, you're a community, and you've really helped, add value. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
And just so all of you know, this has been filmed tonight, so will be available on our website to refer back to as well.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.